The shadows in the basement. In the 1970s, a young couple, Mark and Julie, bought their first home together in rural Ohio. It was a charming Victorian house with a dark history they would soon uncover. The previous owner, an elderly woman, had lived there her entire life, but she was eager to sell, moving into a nursing home. The house, steeped in history, seemed like a dream come true for Mark and Julie. However, soon after moving in, things started to go wrong. At first, it was just small, unsettling events, lights flickering, doors creaking open by themselves, and Julie's keys constantly going missing, only to be found in strange places like the refrigerator or the old, disused basement. Mark laughed it off, attributing it to the quirks of an old house, but Julie couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The basement was particularly unsettling. Dark, dank, and cold, it had low ceilings and shadowy corners. Julie avoided it whenever possible, but Mark eventually suggested they clean it out. As they descended the creaking stairs, the air grew colder, and they felt a creeping sense of dread. In the far corner of the basement, behind an old wardrobe, they found a large, heavy chest bound with rusted chains. The sight of it made Julie's skin crawl. Despite her reservations, Mark insisted on opening it. Inside, they found old, tattered clothes, yellowed papers, and a faded photograph album. As Julie flipped through the album, she saw photos of the house under construction and of a family, a man, a woman, and 3 young children. As the photos progressed, the children's faces became increasingly gaunt and hollow, their expressions turning to fear and sadness. A small, crumpled note fell from between the pages. It read, asterisk, "They're in the walls. Don't go in the basement at night." Asterisk. Julie's unease deepened, but Mark dismissed it, trying to reassure her. That night, Julie couldn't sleep. She heard faint scratching and whispering sounds coming from the walls. The next morning, exhausted and on edge, she told Mark about the noises, but he chalked it up to the house settling or possibly mice. The noises continued every night, growing louder and more insistent. One night, just past midnight, the sounds seemed to be coming from directly beneath their bed, deep in the basement. Terrified, Julie shook Mark awake, and they both crept downstairs, flashlights in hand. The scratching grew louder as they approached the far corner of the basement, near where they had found the chest. Then, the noises suddenly stopped. The next day, they decided to call in a contractor to inspect the basement and walls. The contractor wasn't fazed by their story, having heard similar complaints from other old houses. He started knocking on the walls, searching for hollow spots. When he reached the far corner where the chest had been, he paused. The wall sounded different, almost as if there was a space behind it. He tapped it again, harder this time, and the wall gave way slightly, revealing a small, hidden door. The contractor pried open the door, revealing a narrow passage leading into darkness. The air that wafted out was stale and cold, carrying a nauseating stench. Despite their fear, Mark and Julie followed the contractor into the passage, their flashlight beams flickering in the thick, oppressive darkness. The passage ended at another wall, but this one looked newer, as if someone had hastily constructed it to seal off whatever lay beyond. The contractor hesitated but began chipping away at the wall. It didn't take long before the wall crumbled, revealing a small, hidden room. The stench that poured out was unbearable. Inside the room, they found rotted wooden furniture and the remains of what appeared to be a makeshift bed. But in the far corner, buried under a pile of rubble, they found bones, small, fragile bones that were unmistakably human. The police were called immediately, and the house became a crime scene. The investigation revealed that the bones belonged to 3 children, likely the same ones in the photographs. The house had a dark history that had been buried and forgotten. In the early 1900s, the original owner of the house, Samuel Turner, had been a respected member of the community. But after his wife died during childbirth, he became increasingly paranoid and obsessed with protecting his children from an unseen force he believed was in the house. In his madness, he sealed his children in a hidden room in the basement, where they eventually died of starvation and neglect. Mark and Julie were horrified. They moved out immediately, unable to bear living in a house with such a tragic past. The house remained vacant for years, gaining a reputation as the cursed house among the locals. Some say the spirits of the children still linger there, trapped in the walls where they died, scratching and whispering, trying to tell their story to anyone who will listen.